Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinars. Today, we will be covering the Entrustable Professional Activities, EPAs, for postgraduate medical education. The aim of the webinar is to go through the implementations of EPAs and to help you familiarize yourself with the concept, including assessment rules, basis for formal entrustment decision, and available assessment forms. In the first few minutes, I'll give you an introduction about the topic and mainly focusing on the assessment part. And in the remaining 75 minutes, Dr. Teodora will be talking about the implementations of EPAs. So beside myself, Dr. Teodora will be presenting. She is assistant professor and consultant of obstetric and gynecology at the College of Medicine and Health Sciences at UAE University. So the NIHS, as you know, was established by a cabinet decree as a national institution mandated to spearhead, regulate, and organize professional development for the health workforce, with a particular emphasis on specialty training. Our vision is to develop a highly qualified health workforce able to support the health system and promote health and well-being. Our mission is to set and maintain high professional and standards towards strengthening the health workforce capacity and promoting health. Our main roles are setting standards for both institution and specialty program, accredit the training institutions and program, conduct the specialized examination, and then issue the certifications for health specialties, also known as a board examination. So when it comes to our governance framework, we have a board of directors, an executive committee, advisory committee. But what I'm trying to focus here is on the Central Assessment Committee, which is responsible to develop the assessment procedures, criteria, and recommendation. So the assessment starts with a final year medical students who has interest in applying to the residency training in UAE. So we have the Emirates Medical Residency Entry Examination, also known as EMRE, Emirates Dental Residency Entry Examination, and Emirates Pharmacy Residency Entry Examination. These examinations start every year in December and end by March, and we give them the chance to do the examination if they fail up to 3 times. The examination was designed to help the programs, program directors and institutions to stratify the applicants when they are applying to residency training. To know more about this examination, please scan the barcode. We also have the Maharashtra Board examination, and I got many questions of how to achieve the Maharashtra Board specialty certification. Basically, the applicant has to obtain a medical qualification acceptable by NIHS, could be MD, MBBS, or other specialty, the bachelor in dentistry. The applicant has satisfactory completed specialty or subspecialty program accredited by NIHS and attested by program director for independent practice, and the applicant has successfully completed all assessments required by NIHS, including Part 1, Part 2 examination. So what I'm focusing today on is the program director signing off the residents for independent practice, and on what basis. Now, again, to learn more about our examination, please scan the barcode. The good news, this week, we conducted the Part 1 examination for 386 residents, and the performance was very well done. But these examinations are looking at the knowledge part, the Part 1. The Part 2 will look at the knowledge and clinical, and there are other exam assessment that we're looking for. So we need to assess the competencies. And the competencies, as you know, we have adopted the ACGME competencies, looking at the patient care, medical knowledge, professionalism, communication skills, practice-based learning, and system-based practice. And we do highly recommend assessing the milestones of each of these competencies through the training duration. And we're trying to move to ensure that we're securing a safer and a higher quality practice by improving the training assessment. And also, this is known as a competency-based medical education. Why? Well, because it's a better and broader and more specific descriptions for the physician and healthcare providers. And it's moving us from assuming competence to assessing the competencies. Certification only when they meet the standards. It's not based on the examination alone, but it's based on competency, not just on a time in training, where training can be extended easily if needed. And the Clinical Competency Committee, which is part of every program and part of our accreditation standards, is playing a very essential role here. The Clinical Competency Committee is, as you know, appointed by the program director to actively monitor, evaluate, and provide reporting on the trainees as they advance through the training and provide constructive feedback based on the assessment system. And the goal of the CCC committee is to assure that the trainees are progressing at each training level so that they are prepared to practice the core specialty or subspecialty without supervision upon successfully completion of the program. The committee must be composed of at least 3 faculty members with a minimum of 1 core faculty. They have to have a clear mandate relating to reviewing the residents' evaluation and making recommendation to the program directors on promotion, remediation, or maybe dismissal. They should assess and discuss each resident's performance not less than twice a year. They need to prepare a report to the NIHS on specialty-specific educational milestones when identified by the review committee or other applicable and objective measures of the resident's performance. The CCC committee should be meeting and conducted, as I mentioned, at least twice a year, and the findings of the meetings must be shared with each resident on at least semi-annually. The committee should be monitoring each resident's performance through continuum of their educational training. There must be a written descriptions of the duties, meetings, process, decision-making, and reporting of the committee. A functional committee with a regular meeting minutes and a monitoring mechanism and process that lead to a tangible output. The program directors eventually has the final authority to make the determinations about the action that will be taken based on the recommendation of the committee. The program directors has the final authority to make the determination about changes to the educational program based on the CCC recommendation. and the program director should provide a formal feedback on each residence no less frequently than semi-annual. Now, there, as you see, different evaluation tools, from milestones evaluations to procedural, to self and peer evaluations, to in-training test scores. But what I'm trying to focus today is on entrustable professional activities, which is the unit of professional practice, also known as tasks, that may be entrusted to a learner to execute and supervise once he or she has demonstrated the required competency. We're shifting of focus from individual competencies to work that must be done. And it was first described by Tim Kate, as you see here, back in 2005. Now, there are 5 levels of supervision reflecting the increasing trust in trainees' autonomy. So we start as usual. If you got a year 1 interns, where you trust him to observe only. But with time, he will see one. Next, maybe he acts under a direct supervision. A 3rd level is act indirect supervision. And a 4th level is when you trust him to act with distant supervision, where you could be around in the hospital, but you trust that he will call you if needed. And the 5th level is when the trainees is trusted to perform independently. And not only that, but he can provide supervision to a junior resident. So far, we have 45 scientific committees working on defining the EPAs within their specialty. Out of the 45, I can tell you, we have 5 who are ready to go live. And we're looking at a platform where every resident and faculty will have an application that they can be assessed for all the EPAs and the work-related assessment, and the program directors, DIO, will have an overview of all their trainees and their progression and their competencies and EPAs. Normally, again, it would go step by step with the training from novice to advanced to competent to proficient to an expert, where in that point we can say, yes, he's ready for unsupervised practice and ready to graduate. And the message here is the old schools of most of the board were based on examinations, or they called as a board examination. And people think that that examination is the only piece of paper where we can entrust the residents to be a physician independently the next day. But at the National Institute of Health Specialty, the Maharashtra Board, we're changing the concept. The examination is only one part of being board certified. The other part is being competent, entrusted for unsupervised practice. And once you got the Maharashtra Board, that's not the end of the story. We'd like you to maintain your certification via Eportfolio, which reflect, plan, and manage your continuing professional development. You need to document your learning activities and outcome, and need to access the earning and learning resources of the programs. So we're building up a continuing professional development system that includes all the activities that doctors undertake formally and informally, in order to maintain and update, develop, and enhance their knowledge, skills, and attitude in response to the need of their patients. And the good news here that many of the works related to the competency framework for medical education in UAE has already been done for the undergraduate. I'd like to thank the CAA, the Ministry of Health, all the medical schools in UAE, University, University of Sharjah, Khalifa University, MBRU, Ajman University, Dubai Medical College, and Ras Al Khaimah Medical College, as well as Gulf Medical University. They all work together as a team and they produce the Emiratis Med. And this is for undergraduate. I'm working now with a team to redefine it for the postgraduate education. I'd like to thank our strategic partners, the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Department of Health Abu Dhabi, Dubai Health Authority, UAE University, Saha, Emirates Health Services, and Dubai Health Academic Corporation. So thank you all, and we're moving next to listen to Dr. Theodora on the implementation of EPAs. Dr. Theodora, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and we are really pleased to hold this webinar and to talk again about EPAs. This is a subject very near to my heart and very dear to my heart because it represents one of the pillars of education and assessment. So, as it was highlighted before, one entrustable professional activity is one unit of professional practice or a task, a very small part of the clinical activity that can be fully entrusted to a trainee only once he or she has demonstrated the necessary competence to execute that activity unsupervised. Here comes that becoming competent means passing the threshold that allows for sufficient trust in the trainee to act unsupervised. Now, there are many reasons we militate for implementing EP assessment system. And among them that is to ensure that trainees receive sufficient support to become competent in the main domains of their practice. Also that we focus and align the levels of supervision adopted to the trainees' needs. We are not unnecessarily supervise repeated actions, and we are supervising enough to ensure the competence. There is a stepwise and a safe engagement of trainees in clinical practice with a progressive autonomy, which is bounded though until they graduate. Programs apply assessment tools which are objective and meaningful, and therefore eliminate the possible bias. And also that we ensure that the trainees will graduate with a sufficient set of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, allowing them to practice at a high and safe clinical level. When we are talking about EPA implementation, we have to understand that this will bring trainees a very clear understanding of their progress and requirements, and also the level of professional task they are needed to achieve. Also, they provide supervisors with a solid justification for delegating an activity to trainees, everybody is clear why trainee A is allowed to go for a trusted activity and trainee B is not yet. Also, the structural entrustment decision formally acknowledged that a trainee has passed a threshold that allows for decreased supervision. And finally, a workplace curriculum around EPAs create a longitudinal view of each learner performance via aggregated performance evidence. It will be very clear on a panel of activities how far the trainees are gaining their entrustment. Now, we have to understand that implementing EPAs, we are moving from an assumed trust to a demonstrated and gained trust. I mean, ad hoc decision of entrustment may occur and will occur daily in clinical education, day and night, over on call, in chronic situation, in acute situation. But we need a system where the trust is given to a trainee after they prove that they are competent. And that should be through a portfolio of evidence, knowledge tests, and professional discussions, and all the assessment tools which are allowing us to pass over the trust. And therefore, the summative decision of entrustment are based on multiple structured workplace assessment, and they are focusing on increasing autonomy. There are many studies which are showing that in medical post-grad medical education, the trainees are not given the trust to act. And this is a study from Journal of American College of Surgery, published in 2019. And it's showing that in a palette of disciplines, from surgical care to neurosurgery to ophthalmology to trauma, the residents are not allowed, or they are not trusted to act. There is a seniorization of the task towards the faculty or more senior residents. And that is in the name of patient safety. Well, that has a very long-term bad effect, because this will lead to poorly prepared residents or trainees for unsupervised practice, and therefore later on the patient safety is jeopardized after they will finish the training and graduate. So the question of, okay, can I leave that trainee to carry on or to take over what I'm doing now to the patient? Like in this article, can I leave the theater? And non-surprisingly, many answers are no, or how could I know they can do it? And the answer was beautifully given by the Entrustable Professional Activity System. As Dr. Mohammed said, the concept was developed long back by Olet and Kati. So we have to shift the philosophy of workplace-based assessment from the broad competence assessment to a EPA assessment. And that is why, in the broad competence assessment, we are looking retrospectively. Does the trainee achieve everything, all the knowledge, skills, and attitude taught in the courses and rotations? So did they learn enough? While if we are looking to the EPA system, our assessment is far prospective, because we are asking another question. Based on what the resident or the trainee learn, are they able to perform further tasks? So we are moving from the person to the actions that person have to do in future. There are some general rules which should apply when we are building the EPAs. Therefore, each subspecialty or specialty define the EPAs that are best suited to ensure that the residents or fellows progress through training appropriately. The number of EPAs for a specialty or subspecialty is determined by the specialized specialty committee or the scientific committees. The prerequisites for entrustment or decreased supervision must be clearly defined and made available to trainees and faculty, because everybody has to understand what is required, on which conditions, and which are the tasks and objectives to be demonstrated. At the level of NIHS, we are helping in building and implementing the system through putting together a database, making available an electronic log system. We have given a logistic support, and in the end, we will do a system of program assessment quality, where one of the components will be assessing the EPA progression. At the level of scientific committees, the committees are coming together and they are building the EPAs. There is in each committee a large panel of representation, and specialists in their own domain are putting together their thoughts and finding the best way to build and to implement or give the tools for implementation for EPAs. The volume of all EPAs shall be sufficient to cover, if not all, at least majority of the aspects of that specialty or subspecialty. And that must include the variety of pathology. And sometimes we have to think about gender-specific, age-specific particularities. Also, the variety of skills, from cognitive, surgical, or other non-surgical, of course, professional, of course, scholar. And variety of encounters, from acute to chronic, stable, unstable, and other parts of the specific specialty requirements. In each entrustable professional activity description, there shall be determined very clear few items. And all these are absolutely keys in implementation. So we have to have a clear description of the task, of the clinical activity, which are the key functions of that activity. We have to have an assessment plan, which are including the assessment tools, including the clinical environment variables, who's assessing, and what are the assessment forms. We also have to determine clear what are the bases for formal entrustment decision. And we have a number here, but more important than the number is the quality aspect. And number and quality aspect, it's also important to be judged by a panel of specialists, which is the CCC committee. Another item very important is the expected PGY level of entrustment. And I will talk a little bit further about this. And of course, we have to have the volume of knowledge, skills, attitudes, milestones, or any other clinical questions which are needed for the assessment of that activity. So it goes without saying that one EPA needs a sum of milestones to be fully or fulfilled in order for the assessor to give an achieved or trust with an achieved event. I took here one EPA, which actually it's a real one. I took it from urology. And let's discuss it as an example. So this EPA is about assessing and managing patients with a difficult catheterization in an urgent setting. Very clear title. The key features, this EPA focus on identify the acuity of the clinical issue, developing a differential diagnosis and a management plan, and performing the appropriate procedure. This EPA also includes immediate post-procedural care, which may include management of post-obstructive diuresis, sepsis, and/or visible hematuria. So if somebody reads these key features, I think there is no doubt about what is this activity focusing on. Let's go a little bit further. Now, there is an assessment plan. The assessment tool is case review by supervisor for the cognitive part, but it's direct observation of procedure. So we have a combination of supervision models, and we have the supervisor. Now, the supervisor goes without saying should be either a faculty or an entrusted more senior trainee. Now, what is important is to see the clinical variables here. So we are talking about patients which may be male or female, which may be adult or pediatric, with acute retention or not, with anesthesia local under sedation or without. And the procedure performed could be either of the following or a combination of the following: different catheters, guide wires, dilators, cystoscopy, percutaneous suprapubic catheter. Therefore, could be selected one or more of these procedures. The basis for formal entrustment decision. Well, it says here, collect 5 observations of achievement. I will come back to this number, but what is please important to see, you see the variety, the clinical variety among these observations. At least 2 to be acute, at least 1 of each in the category of procedures, different catheters, guide wires or dilator, and cystoscopy, and at least 2 different assessors. Why is this important? Because through the EPA assessment, we shall try as much as possible to avoid bias, to avoid that somebody will only see the same case again and again and again with good achievement, but without focusing on the larger panel. When we are talking about the number of achieved observations, I would like you to understand that for the CCC, for the Clinical Competence Committee, this is just a guide. The CCC may decide a lower or a higher number needed for that trainee to be entrusted. So it's very important that the CCC committee come together with their experience, with their knowledge of their own trainees, and make a decision which is tailored to that trainee. So we are not focusing that much on the number, but we are focusing on the palette of procedures, the quality of the procedures, and the committee discussion. When it's unsupervised practice expected to be achieved, we would like to have here again a guide. When do the program believe that a trainee should pass an entrustment in this or that activity? Why is that important? It's not only to consider the progression and the graduation towards the next level, but it's important to identify the learners which are outliners. because we will have a big majority which are on track. We may have a few which are outstanding and they are going faster. Therefore, they may need a little bit different program, maybe focus on other activities which are at a higher level of expertise. But more important, we have to identify the slower learners, because these people need our help and support, either to adjust the exposure, the volume, the time, maybe increase the opportunities. And also it's important for the trainees to understand when they are slowing down, when they are out of track, because they have to understand their own resources and to be ready to respond to the PD activities. We put here the actual assessment form. It's on paper now, but it will be hopefully soon electronically. So we have to have a statement of the trainee, resident or fellow name, ID. Whoever opens this assessment form will have very quick the EPA title and the key features here, so you don't have to look further or somewhere else to understand what activity is under debate or under development. Date of observation, obviously it's very important. And then the next boxes are the clinical variables. We are talking about the type of assessment. As we stated before, in this situation is a case review and direct observation of procedure. And we have the patient variables, the gender, the age, the acute retention, yes or no, the anesthetic method, and the palette of procedures. Again, can be selected one or more as the case. Now, the next is about the milestones associated with each EPA. And for each milestone, the assessor should understand which level of activity or the competence the trainee was just demonstrated. So for each of them, they had knowledge or they performed under full supervision. They needed full support to do it. They needed moderate supervision, or they did it by themselves without any help, or they could even demonstrate that they can teach. There is a very important palette here about the feedback to resident and the clinical competence committee as needed. And it's important to give a feedback to the clinical competence committee, but it's even more important, and actually it's vital, to give feedback to the residents there and then. Because that is one particular moment when they have to analyze what just happened and what can be done better next time. They have to understand what was good and what was not that good, and where they have to work further to remediate. Also, there is important place here for professionalism and patient safety, and major concerns regarding the learner professionalism or patient safety shall be stated here if they are. Of course, they have to be described, and there is the supervisor name and ID. Now, after all these, the supervisor shall decide, based on the overall activity and observation, where should he or she trust it's a personal assessment, where we put the resident in one of these 5 boxes. this is not a summative, this is formative. So how is this translated? If there is a cognitive or procedural activity, in observation without execution means that the resident has knowledge, or they assisted having knowledge, but they didn't perform it. When we put the box 2, execution with direct supervision, either cognitive or procedural, they perform tasks with a full help, with essential involvement from the supervisor. In the box 3, execution with reactive supervision means that the resident or the fellow perform tasks under moderate supervision or a procedure with minimal non-essential involvement of the supervisor. When we are considering the level 4, means that they perform the task with conditioned independency. Basically, they didn't need any support, any input from the faculty. And of course, in the 5th one, they did demonstrate that they can supervise and they can teach. Now, let's go to some collective activity. And I would like you to identify yourself in the position you either have or another one which you want to play with, either as an institutional leadership member, a DIO, a member of the GMEC or the CMO, a program director, sorry, faculty, trainee, coordinator, or just a CCC member. So I will just give you a few seconds. I don't think it needs for a long time for you to identify in one of these roles. So just think what you would like to, where do you like to play a role in this implementation, and identify yourself. Okay, I think everybody is done. So let's go further. Let's take a couple of minutes, and in this activity, try to identify 2 important or the most effective 2 actions needed for EPA implementation, and we will take the level of institutional leadership, yeah, either DIO or CMO level. So what do you think are the most important, very effective actions which must be undertaken by the DIOs and CMOs? I'm waiting for your feedback. I hope we have some DIOs in the group, maybe not CMOs. None of them? None of you identified as? Any DIO or DIO role? Raise your hand, please. You can raise your hand and we will, yes? Would you please unmute? Yes. Dr. Shifan? Yes.
Yes, assalamualaikum everyone. So I could identify myself in the DIO or the CMO level because I work in the curriculum committee at the biomedical college. So I need clear defined EPAs where the faculty, residents, and relevant professional organizations can identify the EPAs. So luckily we have the EPAs. So I would look for the curriculum integration of these EPAs and map out how to align these EPAs with the learning objectives and competencies. Then I would look for my educational resources and definitely the assessment tools and rubrics. I would like to train my trainers on how to assess these competencies, professional development course for them, and then feedback and reflection.
Okay. These are very good actions. I do agree with you, but they are more at the program level, at the institutional leadership. There is a step higher than that because you are overseeing multiple programs. So
yeah, plus my experience, we are dealing with the undergrad students.
Right.
So there are two areas, like you're talking about residents right now, and there is a big difference between assessing both competencies. Yeah,
that's true. Okay, so let's see. Yes, Dr. Salma, can you please unmute?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Right. So I am a professor of surgery and vice dean of College of Medicine from Sharjah University. So from the institution leadership and from the higher administration, I would be looking at the important EPA implementation in terms of what are the national and academic needs in the country, and then to have a well-aligned mission and vision of my university and College of Medicine.
That's correct. Okay.
National needs. So what I can do is to align and to customize and tailor my institutional quality assurance, what exactly we are delivering, and maybe there is a need to address the national drive. So let's say one of the main focus is emeritization. So how many students do I have in the medical college and in the university, and what is the next 5-year roadmap for emeritization? Secondly, what are the community needs? Do I need to train my undergraduate students in terms of the contents and the disciplines that I am already focusing on? Or maybe, let's say, trauma is a major killer in Middle East, so, and particularly for youth. So do I have enough training for the students or no? So these kinds of things, which will make me aware that do I have expert qualified faculty to train my students to make the future doctors very much skilled and competent in these areas which I need to focus on.
Thank you. Yeah, these are important aspects, but again, we are trying to focus here on postgrad education, residents and trainee fellows. Dr. Fozia, would you please unmute?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I would like to inform the institution that we have adopted the strategy of competency-based medical education.
Great, okay.
Issue the funding, the resources, the faculty
development. Very good, okay.
Yes, and the framework for EPA-based assessment.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so let's see some activities which I think they are very important for that level. So the DIO and the GMAC shall try to maintain the faculty and trainee training track regarding the EPAs. Because it should be clear for everybody what are we talking about and what is the system about. They have to oversee implementation in each and every program. They don't implement it in the program, but they have to support the PDs into the implementation. And here was the idea of providing resources. Absolutely, excellent. And they also have to adopt a policy which to be common to all the postgrad medical education programs, a policy which are stating that the EPA assessment is part of the program assessment tools. Now, at the hospital level, the hospital administration, the EPA policy, which was delivered by the DIO and GMIC, must be adopted and implemented throughout the institution and the participating sites. Very important, because mind you, the EPA system, it's representing the privileging activities at the postgrad medical education. So the residents are not going through the privileging committees. They are doing the entrustment, or they are gaining the entrustment based on their performance. And therefore, the hospital, they have to acknowledge and they have to implement these policies. Okay, very good. Let's move forward. And we will go to the program level now. We've seen what above the program is happening at the DIO, GMIC, institution, and even higher up, NIHS and the scientific committees. Now let's go to the unit which is actually implementing the EPAs, program level. Here we have few links, the PD, faculty, trainees, coordinator, and CCC. And mind you, each of them is unique and extremely important. There is no way the EPA implementation may happen if these links are not completely engaged and working together. So let's see two important and effective actions needed for implementation of the EPAs at the level of the program director. So the people who identify themselves as program directors, please give us your thoughts. Yes, Dr. Khan, please unmute.
Thank you. I'm an internal medicine program director at Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
And so, one of the most important things is to align these EPAs or map them to proper milestones. And, that's something that we are actually struggling with, trying to understand more, especially because, software such as new innovations and in fact, ACGME, IS Milestones, which is now moving to 2.0, doesn't have a lot of provision for EPAs. So integrating our software with Milestones 2.0 and having no standardized set of EPAs is one of the biggest challenges. So I think we can work on developing and adopting the proper standardized EPAs for individual experiences. Like, when a resident is going into cardiology, there's separate EPAs than when they're working in the ER. And there's like 12 subspecialties of internal medicine. So that's the biggest challenge, I think.
I agree with you. This could be a big challenge. What I would suggest, if in the EPAs you are building, you don't find milestones which are reflecting some of your assessment questions, just put your assessment question down and we will try to map it with a milestone. Because as the milestones are given to us by the ACGME, I agree with you, they are not really friendly always with the EPA assessment. So if you want to assess a resident for a certain fraction of that activity, just put that fraction, the clinical question down, we will map it. It's more important for the trainee and for the assessor to have a common understanding on the activity to be done than for you to force a particular milestone to enter there. So we will help there. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
Anybody else? Please, more program directors.
There are
So-
some comments.
Yes, I can see here the director should be aware and have good knowledge about the map and the program and curriculum. That's true. After, he should supervise the activity of residents and other attending to be sure all the items in the curriculum are fulfilled. That's correct. That's correct. Supporting, okay. Anybody else? Okay, so let's go and see what we thought about. So first, majority of the PDs are already contributing to the EPA building, being members of the scientific committees in the NIHS. So this is one major contribution they have from the very beginning. We don't impose EPA, we ask, specialists to work together and to provide us with the best set of EPAs applicable to their own specialty or subspecialty. The next things which is extremely important is the PDs shall try to implement a curriculum built around EPAs. So all the knowledge, skills, and attitudes taught to the residents should finally target a clinical action. It should help them to achieve the performance at a very high level. Of course, it's important to maintain a transparent platform of implementation. This is not a hidden item. Everybody has to understand that we are clear and we are transparent about what are the tools and how do we assess. And of course, distribute all needed information to faculty and trainees and maintain an informational background and environment. All right, of course, there may be many more, and I'm sure you could identify many more actions. We are just discussing maybe the most important of. Now, at the level of faculty, and I'm sure we have a lot of faculties there. I think it's one mic open. If you please mute it. Okay. So at the faculty level, and I really hope we have a lot of faculties here, what shall we do? I see here, data is more important, encourage documentation of observation. Absolutely, this is what the PD should do, but also the faculty, they have to do. Any other thoughts? Any other faculty member? Supportive, ready to provide constructive feedback. Absolutely, that is important. And constructive, immediate feedback is one of the major keys in education. Clear objectives and goals. Yes, absolutely. Raise awareness among peers. Yeah, we have to discuss with each other. We have to update each other. We have to have the same understanding about what we are assessing and what we are questioning the trainees. We have to speak the same language. Absolutely. What is one supervisor should be understood and done by the other supervisor. Tries to supervise the residents based on roadmap and logbook. Yeah, logbook is a little bit different subject here because there is a volume maintenance, and that shall be definitely kept in good order even after the entrustment. And it's even more important to keep it after entrustment because this is the moment that item is considered as a self-done. Before that is just a building up skills. But the moment the trainee is entrusted, that is a activity which is done by that person, and these should be maintained into the logbook. Very good. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. These are very, very good thoughts. So let's see. The faculty mainly has, above the items you just stated, two important tasks. They have to supervise, not only for the EPAs, because that is only a last fraction, but also before the EPA assessment into the building up skills. And they have to provide the assessment, the formative assessments. So they have to be aware about all aspects of the EPAs, the description, what are the assessment tools and rules, and how to, give a feedback in a constructive way to the resident, to the trainee. They also have to ensure multiple information in the assessment part. They have to cover as much as possible all the variables, the clinical variables and environment possible to that EPA. And very, very important, I'm coming again and again back to this item, immediate, meaningful feedback to the trainee. It's a very important learning moment in a trainee activity. And of course, for each EPA, the assessment documentation shall be done correctly. Right, let's go to the next level, the trainee. I'm curious if any of you identify themselves as resident or fellow. So let's be young again, and let's hear from the trainees. Please give me your thoughts. Any learner in the panel? If not, just think you are back again in the training time and you are either resident or a fellow. What should be your role, your activity in the EPA implementation? Nobody? Please raise your hand, please. Any hand? Any hand will do. Ownership. Oh, yes. That is really, really important. Dr. Fozia, would you please unmute?
Sure. It's nearly the same. It's self-assessment and improvement of oneself.
Yes.
And tracking
Yes.
the progress.
Absolutely. Because you know what? The trainees, they have to own their progress. As much as we are putting down our energy and willingness to teach them, they have to be ready to assume the responsibility of absorbing that energy and training. Must fully acknowledge about needs to now required competencies to be achieved. Correct. That is absolutely correct. Okay. I think we can move because, yes, you touched the very, very important aspects. So the trainees, they have to acknowledge all aspects regarding the EPA. They have to understand what are the EPAs, what are the activities, what is their progression, what do they have to demonstrate in order to be entrusted. So all these they have to fully understand. They have to be equal players in this game. It's not an activity which shall be enforced to them. They are partners in this activity. They have to obtain the assessment form or documentation, and they have to ask for the immediate feedback. If this was not provided, they have to have the courage and they have to have the ability to ask for the feedback. Because not everybody is taking well, feedback, mostly if it's a not so positive one, but they have to understand that this is for the best of their training. They have to maintain the clinical activities record through logbooks after entrustment. So the moment they are entrusted doesn't mean that that is game over. Actually, the game just starts, because this is the moment they are not overlooked all the time. They are mostly doing the activities with oversight or after event post hoc supervision. Therefore, they have to maintain a good logbook record. They have to submit the assessment forms to coordinator if the electronic system is not working and there is any other hard paper assessment form. They have to submit it to the coordinators in order to be processed. And they have to follow their progression towards entrustment. They have to own it. And ownership, Dr. Latifa, you're absolutely right, is a key element here. Now, the next one would be coordinator level. They are the PD right hand. So any coordinator in the group, please raise your hand and let's discuss. If not, somebody who wants to play the role of the coordinator or wants to have the best coordinator and what it's expected from. Anybody, please raise your hand or write in the comments. Okay. So, Dr. Fozia, unmute,
Yeah.
please. Yes.
The coordinator has to see if the assessments are being done on a timely basis, if all
Correct.
the software is working, and if everyone is aware, to make sure that the communication is on time.
Communication, yes, absolutely, yes. Well done.
Yeah, I
Very,
think that's
very good. Anybody else? Dr. Khan? Unmute, please.
Yeah, now you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. The coordinator also is the key between the residents and the other committees, because they have to see overall the competencies, and they can coordinate with the committee or with the supervisor also. So I think the implementation of the EPA, the coordinator role, is very, very important.
Correct.
Now, it can be the faculty, it can be the core faculty or non-core faculty, but I think they have to understand that what is really their role is, because without this coordination, we cannot run this EPA in a smoothly fashion. This is just my comment on that.
That's correct. I see here support in implementing and analyzing data. Absolutely. Absolutely. So changes based in feedback in scientific committees. Yes, these are admin changes which need communication to be done. Yeah, that it's the same comment. So let's see what we decided here. It's not my decision, what we thought about coordinators' tasks. So definitely they have to maintain the assessment records. Now, hopefully soon we will have the electronic platform ready for the EPA assessment. Now, through these platforms, all the assessments will be collated and aggregated into dashboards, which will be visible to the PD, obviously, and to coordinators. And therefore, the coordinators may be able to present to the CCC meetings the aggregate records, the data, which are already built into the system about each resident and each EPA which was under discussion or under supervision. Obviously, the EPAs which are not yet it started, they will not be collated there. But when we are talking about ongoing EPAs, the results, they have to be readily assessed and given to the CCC. So this is one very important task to the coordinators. Also, it's very important to maintain the communication, the correspondence before and after the CCC meeting. Because all these data which are flowing from the CCC discussion, going to the PD for the ultimate decision, will be then back communicated to each and every trainee. And these meetings, they have to be coordinated, they have to be maintained correspondence through the coordinators. Of course, very important is to maintain records of the CCC meeting minutes, because mind you, again, CCC at this level is the privileging committee. Extremely important to have a data which to demonstrate that that activity to that resident was discussed, and it was a number of faculty which agreed that that trainee is ready to act unsupervised. Very important. Right. The next will be CCC. I cannot stress enough how important is this committee into the EPA implementation. So I'm ready to hear your thoughts about this. Would you please raise your hands and let's hear what you have to say. Yes, Dr. Fuzia, would you please unmute?
Sure. It's the competence committee which makes the progression decisions about the residents, whether they will progress to the next phase, whether they need remediation, and so on.
Correct. Yes. Who else? Dr. Khan, unmute, please. Would you please unmute?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So the clinical competence committee, we just went through the Royal College surveyors for our program for the pediatrics.
Okay.
And this is the main committee. They are focusing on it and their functioning and how it is, who are the members. So I think this is the very, most important committee, if I must say, about the, for the program. To deal with that, and the main focus of them, we just finished their survey, is that to the maintenance of the committee and the what you call the commitment to that committee of those members. Because if this committee is not fulfilling the program, then it's very important. And its responsibilities are performance review, promotion criteria, process and timeline of promotional decision, academic deficiencies, corrective actions. I mean, it's a lot of things in this committee, what we suggested, and type of corrective actions. So I think this is the very important committee, and these are the roles which I just mentioned very quickly. Has to be, going through this committee.
Thank you. That's very, very good pointed. I can see here a comment: continuous monitoring and analyzing the competency data, give constructive feedback, and take appropriate decision. Absolutely. CCC has a huge, and I cannot stress enough, huge responsibility. It's ethical responsibility and it's clinical responsibility, because here the people are deciding if somebody, a trainee, did demonstrate enough skills, knowledge, or attitudes to be entrusted with a certain activity. We shall be fair with the trainees, we shall be fair with our patients. So the moment should be judged very well when the patient is safe in the hands of our trainees. And actually, that is the whole question about. So the CCC is doing the summative assessment. They will consider the level of proficiency for each observed encounter and the number of events executed at a certain level of supervision and the certain level of achievement, obviously. Now, again, I would want to stress here, we are given orientative numbers for achieved encounters. Now, that is important, but the most important is the quality. It's the achieved level of activity which was done and the competence the trainee was showing during that activity. And again, it's very important for this committee to ensure that our assessment is not biased. We shall try to observe if the activity was covering the full panel of the clinical variables. It's not that one activity could be addressed to pediatric, adult, and geriatric, female and male, and then we have one trainee who achieved 10 events, I'm just saying, only in young male adults, without any possible look at the pediatric or geriatric or the female patients. Shall we entrust that? Or because the number is there, yeah, the number is there, the achievement is there, but did that trainee demonstrate that they can act on other variables as well? So here we have to give the committee the full trust of increasing, decreasing, or not really sticking to that number. The collective experience, the collective trust is more important than a crude number. So quality prevail and the collective decision prevail that number. Right. Also, the CCC will propose to the PD the level of entrustment for each EPA. It's a team proposal to the PD. They also should see if there are major negative gaps between the projected and achieved entrustment for each EPA trainee. If I have somebody in the end of year one or in the end of year two better, and they did not yet completed the EPAs which were supposed to be completed by the end of PGY1, well, I have a gap here. I would rather identify the trainee now than let this trainee go to year 4 when the trainee the trainee period is almost done, and then to observe, oh my God, this is really slow learner. So the earlier we identify gaps, the better we have the possibility, the tools to remediate, to help that trainee. We don't want to punish anybody, but we want them to be supported and to come back on track. And of course, they have to analyze and propose to the PD the advancement into the next PGY, not only based on the EPAs, but looking at the EPAs as well. All right, and now we are coming back to the PD. We are closing the circle. So based on the CCC recommendation, the PD will ultimately decide about the level of entrustment for each EPA and for each trainee. The summative evaluation and final decision by the PD must be communicated and discussed with each trainee. And that will happen at least twice a year. Now, if it happens more often than that, it's even better. Because for some EPAs, you don't need 6 months to assess and to collect all the needed events. So maybe just for EPA implementation and for EPA discussion, the CCC shall meet more often, maybe every 2 to 3 months. All negative gaps must be analyzed, and remediation plan, if it's the case, must be formulated and discussed with the trainee and implemented. Now, if they are severe or multiple negative gaps, if there are multiple EPAs where the trainee is recording negative steps and they are not remediated or they are not remediable, so this could be used as a base discussion for non-promotion or even dismissal from the training program, reorientation to another program, to another specialty, or dismissal from the training as needed. I mean, again, we don't have to wait until somebody is spending years and years in a program, and then in the end, to understand that we cannot let that person practice medicine in that specialty because it's not safe, and the time is over. So the sooner, the better. And of course, the final entrustment report, it has to be documented in the trainee file, and that would be transparent to the NIHS level. Now, what we shall see when we are looking to somebody's file would be the level of confidence the program has for each entrustable activity. So the level of entrustment for each clinical activity. And that would be either 1, 2, 3 as a formative or as a learning curve. And then we see level 4 and 5, which are in green here, and which are showing that these trainees are already entrusted. They demonstrated enough competence to be entrusted to act unsupervised in that particular clinical activity described by the EPA. We shall have here the PGY level and the date of entrustment. Why is important to have the PGY level? Again, to make the relevance with the moment when they were supposed to be entrusted and when they reached the entrustment. So again, to identify if somebody is simply on track or speedier or slower. Now, I really hope I did convince you that EPA implementation is a major improvement into our assessment. And as difficult as it may look, I promise you the moment we will start to roll it, it will be a very enjoyable activity because it's so closely related to the education and clinical role. And the moment we will have trainees at the level of teaching, they can take a lot of burden from the faculty shoulders when they will start to educate and assess the junior colleagues. So the faculty can actually save their energy into supervising and training more difficult or more complex clinical aspects rather than to take everything from the ABC beginning. So I would like to give you a little bit of time to state or to tell us what do you think would be very beneficial in your own department if we will implement, and when, not if, when we will implement the EPA system. So would you please raise your hands when you are ready? Yes, Dr. Khan, would you please unmute?
Yes, I think the biggest advantage of having EPAs will be that since they will be very specific to each individual experience, specialty, etc., the faculty and the teachers will be able to observe, understand, and assess the residents' performance according to their understanding of the actual EPA. So I think assessments will be more accurate and they will more accurately reflect the residents' performance and their ability to work independently.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Very well pointed. Anybody else? I can see here, quality of training provided is ensured and audited. Yes, it's an auditable, very good. It's an auditable activity and more objective feedback. Absolutely. Thank you. That's a good comment. Okay, Dr. Shiba, would you please unmute?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Actually, it can be used as an early diagnostic tool whereby it helps both the faculty as well as the residents to identify the areas where they have to concentrate more and they have to.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Yes, well pointed.
The constructive feedback, what we give, that will be a kind of an early guidance for the trainee so that these micro assessments will help and guide them with our constructive feedback.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I can see here engagement of trainees. Faculty are calibrated and residents know what is expected from them. Absolutely. Yes. Objective assessment. Yes. Very good. Very good. Okay,
Yeah.
Dr. Fozia.
Yeah, it will also be a tool for ensuring that the program or the residency is effective. The quality of the residency itself can be reflected by these because it's documented.
Absolutely. Not only that, but you know, we can compare peer programs. We can have the same program in one emirate, one hospital, and in another, and we can see the peer progress into EPAs. And then we can try to put together the two programs to help each other in covering gaps or to learn from each other. So this is very important tool into trying to align all the programs into the quality insurance. Yes, engagement of training, their progress, competency-based and not time-based. Absolutely, absolutely agree. Yes. Dr. Dixon, would you please unmute?
Hi, I'm Dr. Dixon from Gulf Medical University. I have a doubt, like, when we have different cases and in one case, the fellow or resident is able to demonstrate that task completion, but in another case, the person cannot do it. So how to make it like more standardized, like the level of case or the complexity,
Right.
yes. Yeah.
So when we were talking about those variables, like age group, case mix, procedural mix, the acuity of the case. So all these, they have to be very well structured, described into the EPA. So one EPA cannot cover a simple and a complex case. They have to be stratified. And if one resident will demonstrate a very good sufficient skills in one case, and in a similar one he doesn't, he simply has to do the activity again and again until they will have a sufficient number of exposure on the achieved. When I say achieved, means level 4 of assessment to claim in the CCC for that entrustment. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, that's a question. How will you ensure that all trainees, co-faculty are aware and trained to execute the task? Well, through the all didactics and clinical rotations we are giving. So, as I said, it's a curricula built around the EPAs. Right, standardization of residency fellowship program among all institutes in UAE. Yes, that's true. Thank you very much. Improving patient safety. Yes, it is, because, you know, nowadays, how do you entrust your trainees to care for the patients? We are just assuming they are doing, I'm seeing, and then based on my skills, I may say they are good, but then the next night after the on-call, they are tired, they don't have sufficient exposure and experience, and based only on one case, they may harm the next patient. While through the EPAs, it's a panel of doctors which are judging a panel or a number of clinical encounters on a certain level, and they are decided together, yes, the resident demonstrated, they can go. So I would say, yes, improving patient safety, definitely. Will help to build confident and competent and competitive, yes, future healthcare professionals. Very good, Dr. Gita, excellent. All right, so I think we are putting together a lot of beautiful thoughts, and thank you very much for your feedback. It's really well taken and demonstrates that basically you have a very good understanding of the EPA. Thank you very much for that. And we are coming to the end of this webinar. If you have any other thoughts you want to discuss or you want to put through discussion of the colleagues, please let me know. If you want to ask anything else. Okay, will the EPAs replace the monthly evaluation assessment? Okay, that's a very, very good question. Basically, if we are going to implement, not if, when we are going to implement EPA assessment model, you may replace a lot of unnecessary items into the rotation evaluation and simply replace them by the EPA progress. Because the EPA programs means that the residents are evaluated in a very large number of milestones. They cannot fulfill a particular EPA if they don't fulfill the milestones. So therefore, you may maintain, or maybe not even that, only few items in the monthly evaluation, like professionalism, maybe, or communication, or things which were not really covered into the EPA milestones. If all were covered, then you don't need to do it anymore. You can just concentrate on the EPA progression. Appreciate if you can share the recording. Yes, we can do that. Are we going to get any attendance certificate? Yes. Thank you very much. We thank you. All right. Yes, Dr. Dixon, would you please unmute?
Just a question, different hospitals are there, private and public hospitals, where systems, healthcare delivery models are different. So is EPAs as good as privileging services? Because every hospital, when we do privileging services, we know a practitioner is good to do or able to do something. EPA can be like generalized across different healthcare systems or hospitals or facilities, or still privileging is even more better?
So privileging committee or privileging activity does not really apply to the residents. Because the residents, in theory, they are under some sort of supervision until their graduation. For the moment, without EPA model, we have nothing, absolutely nothing, to demonstrate to the patients, population, and to the authorities that we have a system to allow the residents practice under a softer supervision based on what? Based on trust that we cannot really assess. While when we will implement the EPA assessment, we have, as I said, a proof that in a certain number and clinical occasions, in a very well described activity, the resident, the fellow, performed at a very high level of proficiency, and a number of panelists, a number of faculty decided that they can go unsupervised. So it may have a kind of legal representation, but there it's very important for the institution to adopt a policy regarding the EPAs. And that policy has to be acknowledged by everybody. Okay, Dr. Shiba?
Hi, ma'am. I think like in Miller's pyramid, the base is knows, and next comes knows how, and after that shows how, and the topmost is does. That is, the candidate is competent. I think definitely EPAs should be placed above this does, because EPAs shows the trust in our trainees. So in the Miller's pyramid, the top should be the trust.
Yeah, that's true. So therefore, through the EPA, we allow the residents to do only when they know, and to know everything they do. So that's the paradigm. And yeah, what you described is the Dreyfus model of learning, and that is very correct. Does the EPA system introduce variability into timeline for program and graduation? Well, the competence-based medical education, it's going to look into the achievement of competence rather than the duration. Now, mind you, in every program, there is a buffer time, which is the elective rotations, which are to the discretion of the program director to be used as the trainee needs. And that time actually allows a trainee either to concentrate more in some activities where they didn't achieve yet the level which we want, or for the faster trainees to concentrate on a more sophisticated or difficult tasks, maybe an orientation towards a fellowship or something. So yes, the PD may allow to use that elective rotations to adjust the competence into the EPA achievement. All right. I think we are coming to the end. I have a question also. Will the assessors fill the evaluation electronically? Yes, yes, of course. Will this promote working relationship among different facilities? Correct. One question about human resources. What would be the better ratio between residents and attending number to implement the EPA? It's the same number as we are requesting for all the programs. The ratio, all faculty to resident or to fellow, is 1:1 when it comes to the full volume. And when it comes to the core faculty, then each program, each specialty, they may have different ratio. Usually the ratio is no less than 1 in 6, but some specialties, they need a higher number of core faculties, as much as 1 in 4. Please correct me if I'm wrong. EPAs fall in thus in Miller's. Yes, it may. It may. We would appreciate your feedback. Yeah, I have to say that. So please give us your feedback regarding this webinar. And if you have any other subjects you would want to have education about, we would really value your input. And also, if you want to stress or to ask for any change in the way we are delivering the data. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And I hope it covered the most of the questions you have about. Definitely, it's not the last discussion we'll have. I promise you we'll discuss again and again about EPAs and how we are going to use them. Have a very nice evening. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Theodora, and thank you to Al Hanouf and Asha. Excellent webinar. And I hope that everyone had at work and how the clinical competency committee should do and evaluate the residents in a regular basis and giving back the feedback to them for improvement. Thank you.